good to have you on the program.
Thank you once again, and compliments of this season.
It's been a while, and this program will be airing in the new year, so it's safe to say Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
A lot happened in the year 2025, and a lot will definitely still happen in 2026.
Absolutely.
For the organized private sector, what are your expectations, especially in terms of the policies that the government has put in place?
Well, it's been a year indeed, 2025. It's a roller coaster year. Many pluses, challenges, and one of the things the private sector have done, and we've done successfully, is to up our level of adaptability, turning seemingly difficult situations to opportunities, because you really don't have option. The other option you have is to keep complaining, and you don't survive in that having the victim mentality. So we have aligned significantly with the reforms. We have made recommendations to government all year round on the issue of the reforms. Areas that we feel the reforms is not achieving is the set objective. We have drawn the attention to government. I must commend the government, at least a couple of agencies, ministries and departments also, that have been very responsive to our issues, our complaints. We could remember vividly the challenge with the Financial Reporting Council levy. The Ministry of Industry and Investment took it up, PEPEC took it up, political stakeholders took it up, and the President magnanimously rose up and ordered the suspension of that levy. The customs and 4% FOB levy was also what we also raised concerns about. It's less about profit maximization. For us, it's more about the overall economic objective of this country. And government cannot be generating humongous revenue while its own overall economic objective of increasing GDP, having a sustainable private sector that can create jobs, and having and in the context of creating jobs, you also reduce the incidence of insecurity. So you can't blind your eyes to those key issues and focus on revenue. And government also responded positively to many of those challenges. So we are looking for 2026. We hope the reforms will bear more fruits. The stability that we have witnessed, I think the vagaries, the inconsistencies in macroeconomic issues that we've seen in the earlier part of 2024, early 2025, and towards the mid 2025 and late 2025, there seems to be some macroeconomic stability. So we are hoping that in 2026, the gains of macroeconomic will trickle down to the microeconomy, where the citizens will now start feeling the positives of the government's activities.
It's 2026, and not just for the organized private sector. Talking about reforms, one particular topic or issue is what is going to frame at least the better part of 2026, which is the tax reform. What is the organized private sector's position as regards the tax reform? Is it a welcome development? What are your observations?
We've seen at play the massive potential of the social media to shape conversation, to sell a narration. And as someone said, what you listen to, feeds your soul and influences your perception. So if what you are listening to is erroneous, progressively it starts making sense to you. And that's what we've seen on the issue of the tax reform. We understand that there are a lot of antagonists to the reforms from the beginning. So it wasn't a matter of what was gazetted, wasn't what was passed. It was the offensive against the tax reform started from the first day. So we will not play into the hands of people we call the fifth columnists. I want to drag the system back. So there are inconsistencies which is expected, provided once humans are involved in anything. You always find mischief. You always find deliberate or unintended sabotage is expected once women are involved in the crafting, in the finalization, or the admin process that will lead to the whole package. So we understand that, but that is not sufficient enough for us to remain in Egypt. So for us, for the private sector, and because we're also represented in the presidential committee, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the DG represented the organized private sector in the committee, and we align with the work of the committee. The presidential committee chairman, Tawo Yedele, has earlier expressed concern as per the process, and we all know that, look, a bill moving from our experience, we have the labor bills, we have the OSH bills, so many bills that we have seen that moved from one point to the other, and you realize that things change as it moves from one office to the other. And that was one of the reasons why we insisted, the social partners insisted, when the last Minister for Labour, Dr. Gige, said FEC has approved the labor bills. And the social partners, we insisted that, look, we need to see what FEC approved to be sure that what we discussed is the same bill that FEC approved, because we know a lot of things can happen in between. So it wasn't surprising when this happened, but the Senate has taken a decision for it to be registered. So let's start the process. The provision for amendment is always there. So when we realize certain things are not the way it should be, then we should initiate the process of the amendment. But we align with the Presidential Committee on Fiscal and Tax Reforms, and kudos to the work they've done in the context of engagement, sensitization. We've not seen that before in this country. For a piece of reform to experience that kind of engagement, it's unprecedented.
Talking about engagement, what role has NECA been able to play in terms of enlightening its members as regards the benefits of the tax reform?
Well, I will say this openly and also throw it as a challenge to the chairman of the FRS, Gosak, that Gosak, he has not engaged. He has not really engaged us constructively. All the engagement we've had is with the Presidential Committee, and up till 9th of December, we still had a knowledge sharing session between the private sector and the Presidential Committee. We call it the night before the implementation of the reforms, and it was a massive engagement with close to 1,000 employers on the Zoom call, listening to what are the real issues, what are the changes, what should we expect from the chairman of the Presidential Committee. So we were open in January during the implementation. The FRS that will have been christened by January will be more responsive to the private sector, because the reality is this, and this is to Dr. Sack. The private sector is the most critical stakeholder in this whole context, and the chairman cannot sit down in his office and expect things to work or to fly the way it is. We've been responsive, we've been cooperative, but the chairman must also extend his hands to the private sector and come and engage. Not the Presidential Committee chairman or the committee doing the engagement or people doing the engagement for them. He needs to speak to the private sector. And when we talk about the private sector, we are talking about the organized private sector, not a collection or a group of individuals that are business owners, and we continue to tag them private sector. For us, that's not the way to go.
Under the new tax reform, there are some certain exemptions, especially for SMEs. How would you describe this? Many people I've heard on the street, some say, oh, there are no tax exemptions. Do you think this is misinformation for those that really matter? As a representative of the organized private sector, we know that a large number of employers fall between the brackets of SMEs.
A few days ago, I posted something on one of our platforms, and one of my colleagues had to draw my attention to it that, PG, you have to cross-check this post again. And that is how organized the group that is poised to misinform, how organized they are. And I think we are happy that the Presidential Committee also has come up with its own response, training content developers as volunteers to also continue to create content positive content as per facts and the myth, facts and the realities of the tax code. They're also engaging in that aspect. But there are exceptions for SMEs. In fact, the tax reforms creates opportunities for SMEs to grow. Because globally, without the SMEs, we can't go anywhere. The biggest of the transactions happen in the SME space, happen in the informal economy. And the tax reform, the tax reforms itself has given many opportunities, tax rebates, exceptions, concessions to SMEs so that I can allow SMEs to grow. Same thing for employees and same thing for businesses. I think the most important thing for us, and this is a challenge for Nigerians as it were, is that let's not allow the prophecy or the saying that if you want to hide something from a black man, write it in a book. A black man, we don't read. Let's not allow that myth to continue to sabotage us. Everybody, small business owners, everybody should take time to read the content of the reforms, especially as it concerns your business, because on the long run, it's going to affect all of us. So if you are not careful, you will have been sold a dummy, by mischief makers who will come as consultants and want to sell certain misconceptions to you so that they can profit from your ignorance. So beyond what we say, I think it's also important for everybody to grab a copy of the true gazetted copy. I said true.
Draft or second draft or
the
final draft.
the one that will be regazetted now, so that you can have a glimpse of what are the real issues as it affects you as an individual, and it affects the ecosystem where you are going to operate. But for us, I think it's a positive step, and it's a positive step in the right direction, the tax reforms.
But since there's still going to be a regazetting, or I don't know if it's regazetted form or reform information, don't you think we're in a hurry? Owing to the fact that even at the National Assembly, they've already mentioned that there should be a pause while we understand which is the real document that will be the guiding principles of the law.
If there's a committee of the National Assembly that was established to check, we understand, established to check what happened really and check what are and the protagonist that raised the issue probably will have done the thorough job in identifying those areas, which makes it easier to identify, okay, let's compare this section to this section, and which makes it a bit easier to run. But we would rather say we start implementation of those areas that are not contentious while they deal with those areas that are contentious. And if the protagonists have done a good job of identifying those areas, so it's a matter of checking what happened in transit, in the value chain of the bill and the gazetting, and then do your amendments and do your gazetting. It shouldn't take, if the National Assembly were magnanimous enough to change the national anthem and national pledge in a day, then something as fundamental as the tax reform gazetting shouldn't.
Okay, good response. But looking at the fact that you're representing the organized private sector, and we know we have people that do businesses locally, and we also have foreign investors that might be interested in doing business in Nigeria. Do you think the tax reform law would attract investors?
Yeah, we think it. We think it will. For businesses, there's the company income tax, the context of the withholding tax, so many contexts within the context of our direct implication on organized private sector. I think it makes it a bit easier for the operationalization, makes it a bit easier, and then the appeal process also gives some level of confidence within the operation of the tax reform. So for us, we think fundamentally, I said there might be sections, there might be subsections that are still a bit contentious, but you have to know the depth of the river. You have to at least put one leg. Probably you don't put the two legs, but let's start. And the committee is quite open to engagement And I believe strongly with the personalities driving this process, they are also conscious that they are not numero uno in the context of knowledge. So as we approach implementation, as we approach those issues, definitely we'll be addressing them. And the chairman also made a commitment in the last meeting we had on the 9th, the KSS. In fact, we've already opened an email, tax reforms, NECA/tax reforms at neca.org.ng, that all businesses will publicize the email in January again. And if you have any specific issue as per the tax reforms that directly affect your business, or there's no clarity and you need clarity, send all those requests to that email, and we'll collate and escalate to the committee, and definitely they will give us response. And we will not also bend our principle of appropriateness of doing what is right at the right time. We won't bend it also for the committee. So even when we realize that the committee is not doing what it's supposed to do, then the committee also should be ready to square up with NECA in the context of doing what is right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having us once again, and Happy New Year once again.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.